What was the biggest bullet you dodged?
I had a cardiac arrest about 4 years ago. Dropped dead-ish, in the middle of my shift. Found out after I woke up about a week later that the manager who saw me fall was a former lifeguard and knew proper CPR. B. An ambulance happened to be passing about 2 blocks away. C. Probably the best cardio unit in my state was a 10-minute ambulance ride from where it all happened. Walked out of the hospital about 2 weeks later, full recovery.
Was going to move to a different apartment complex last month, got injured at work and lost hours, therefore, couldn't come up with the deposit money in time. Last week some asshat was cooking meth and caught the building on fire. Edit, my username. My current apartment complex is notorious in my city for having elevator troubles, so in reality, username does check out. Also, you could say I dodged 2 bullets. Point 1, the fire. 2, I know, bad stuff happens everywhere blah blah blah, but the new place really didn't strike me as the kind of place where meth heads live. So I guess avoiding those kind of people for neighbors was dodging a bullet in itself.
Not changing jobs in early 2020. Would have been a short-lived promotion after early restructuring and layoffs. When my great aunt passed away, I was helping to clean out her house. I'm just dragging everything out of the basement and suddenly my dad is like, "Whoa. Put that down gently and let's move away from here." So I put the weird metal tube type thing I'm carrying down and get out of there. Turns out it's a mortar shell from when my aunt worked in a munitions factory during World War II. Bomb squad came and took it away.
Not me, but I had a field service engineer working on one of my big robotic liquid handlers. He decided to bypass the safety pin that prevents the heads from moving while the cover is open while he had a diagnostic program queued up on the computer. What he didn't know was that the instant he reinserted the safety pin the machine would execute the queued instructions and start moving, and he had a hand inside it right in the danger zone. I grabbed his shoulder and yanked his hand out an instant before it was crushed. He stopped ignoring me when I told him to stop bypassing safety lockouts to save a few minutes.
I stayed up all night before a day trip to Hong Kong. You know that days when you haven't slept, you're just kinda robotic and doing the human stuff, nearly zero awareness of anything. Well, I went to cross a street and my friend behind me snatched my shoulder and yanked me backwards just in time to feel the whoosh of a double-decker bus breezing past us. I just looked at him like, "Oh, thanks man," and it took a whole extra minute for my brain to process I would be fucking dead had he not grabbed me.
My mother left me in one state and went back to my abusive stepfather. She tried to get me to drop out of my senior year at HS, move back to their state and just get my GED. They wanted a live-in babysitter, cook and maid. I was so lucky my grandparents let me move in with them and finish school. Edit, thanks for all the love guys. For those who have asked, I'm doing great. I've gone no contact with my mother and stepfather, they're still together, and it's been one of the most healthy decisions I've made. My husband and my kids are amazing and she's missing out big time. My grandparents are alive and well and are still involved in our lives.
After I had a stroke, I was in a coma and it didn't look like I'd wake up. The DRS asked my wife if they should let me go. I only exist because she said no, I didn't dodge a bullet so much as my wife blocked it for me. And #X200B. Edit. I didn't think this would be this popular. I'm posting a video my wife made of the first year of recovery if anyone's interested. Warning, it's long.
Freshman year of college I had a calc class. It was material I had learned before, but for various reasons they didn't give me transfer credit. So I skipped class quite frequently. Though I usually slept in, one morning I find myself awake at 8:30 and not really feeling like sleep. Might as well check in on the class and see what's going on. It was the midterm exam.
My dad was going through severe depression 10 years ago and my life was equally shitty for a whole multitude of reasons, and it was rubbing off on me. I spent what felt like half an hour crying on the floor and working up the nerve to pull the trigger, then when I finally did, the safety was on. I sold my gun the next morning. Wish my dad was able to say the same 3 years later, RIP. Edit. Thank you all for the kind words and even awards. I never expected this thread to explode in popularity the way it did. I've tried my best to respond to everybody, but if I missed you, that doesn't mean that I'm not thankful for your input.
When I was in middle school I wanted to buy a fedora, but none could fit my head.
At 17 I met and married a sweet little North Carolina daddy's girl. Had I not, I would have still been hanging with my friends that just discovered heroin. Of the 3 friends, 2 are dead and 1 did 10 years in prison.
A friend had lost his job under suspicious circumstances. A few weeks later he asked me to take him to the bank. As I got near to pick him up, I caught a train. He called to say never mind, he would get someone else. A few days later a friend sent out a message to a large number of our friends. This guy lost his job and was running a check cashing con. Can you cash this check for me? I'll pay you $50 if you do. The check is $500. He has no backing funds, you eat the whole amount. He did this to several friends in a few days to amass a few grand and was about to skip town when the cops got him.
7.92 Mauser rifle bullet. When I was 15-ish I was very depressed and got very drunk, found my great-grandfather's World War I captured German rifle, found some bullets from that time, loaded it, and put the rifle in my mouth and pulled the trigger. Thankfully the bullet was not loaded properly, was a dud for being 90 years old at the time, and did not fire.
There was a pile of stuff that people would leave at our house when I was at university, coats and stuff. Moving out day and we found a random samurai sword in the pile. We were messing about with it trying to make it go, swoosh. I was stood facing my brother while he was swooshing it when the blade dislodged from the handle, flew straight past me and stuck horizontally into my headboard. So yeah, my brother nearly impaled me while messing around with a random sword we found after a house party. Pics for proof. Many years ago, my flight had just landed at Chicago O'Hare and the plane was taxiing when the pilot suddenly slammed on the brakes. People were literally thrown forward against the seat in front of them. A few seconds later, another plane, taking off I think, went screaming by right in front of us. No explanation was given, though our imaginations provided a lot of gory details.
Getting chased by someone with a knife across my apartment. I closed my door at the right moment so that person ended up stabbing my wooden door instead. The mark was there until I left the apartment a few years later as a constant reminder of what could have been.
A literal police car. The police were chasing someone and I was crossing the road and my dumbass was walking slowly and the police car nearly grazed me. Look both ways and take off your headphones when you cross the road, kids.
My newborn needed to be rushed to a super high-level NICU to be put into a state of induced hypothermia, because he only had hours before he would suffer permanent brain damage. I live in a small town in the middle of nowhere. The small town next door just barely upgraded their hospital to have that hypothermia suite, one of only a few in Texas. He's doing great, no sign of any damage.
Literally. I was walking back to our barracks in Afghanistan talking with my peers and my staff sergeant. We get to on part, my staff sergeant grabbed my collar and pulled me back. Right there was a unexploded 40 Malum grenade projectile from a launcher sitting where my foot was about to land. Big yikes.
I can answer this in a literal way. When I was a child, I was playing video games with my little brother. Well, he found our dad's gun and fired it. No one was hurt, but it scared the shit out of me. A few years ago I had pneumonia, but my whole family insisted that it was just post-nasal drip, which runs in the family. After a week or two I woke up in the middle of the night when I couldn't feel my arm. After I got to the doctor said that it was the worst he'd ever seen and he was surprised I wasn't dead. I had 3 pounds of mucus cut out of my lungs and another 2 weeks in the hospital siphoning out the rest. For 3 months afterwards I could barely walk half a mile without starting to pass out, and I still can't run for more than 200 to 300 yards without collapsing.
Missed a train by seconds, got on the one after. The one I missed hit someone.
Almost proposed to a girl who had been cheating on me with a pile of shit that called himself my best friend. This was years ago, and I'm getting married at the end of the month to the love of my life. Life has a way of working itself out.
X said we can have unprotected sex after getting some unfortunate news from her gynecologist. Something felt off. Few years later she had twins with some guy.
When I was 15, I'm 16 now, I was being manipulated and lied to by a 20-year-old man for sex. I brought the topic on Reddit so people could give me their opinion and a random Redditor helped me snap out of it. A few weeks ago I talked to the 20-year-old and I then completely understood that he just saw me as a walking hole to stick his dick in. Edit. I did not sleep with him. I snapped out of it before he got the chance.
A guy pursued me for 3 years and I couldn't get away from him no matter how hard I tried. But finally he got sued for harassment and rape of multiple women. As a kid, after running errands in town with my mom, I was climbing into the backseat of our family station wagon. A semi-truck hit a power line pole down the street, causing the still live wire to fall, bounce off the roof of the car and hang across the open door just a foot or two above my legs. Raised Catholic, I wondered for a while after if I had actually died that day and that the rest of what I thought was my life was my purgatory.
Around 30,000 pounds. I was driving with my wife in town one snowy evening and we had pulled up to a stoplight. I happened to glance up at the rear view mirror and saw a city bus heading towards us, and rotating sideways. I hit the gas and pulled ahead into the intersection and left into the turning lane, and less than a second later, the bus went sliding through right where our car was. It came to a stop on the other side of the intersection and fortunately didn't hit anything, but 1 second or 2 feet difference and we would have had some nice spinal injuries.
I interviewed for a job that I wanted desperately in August 2019. After the initial phone interview, I went in for an in-person interview at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday. I had a rejection in my inbox by 8 p.m. and was completely gutted. Then 2020 happened, and they laid off 60% of their staff and will probably go under. I'm thankful for that rejection every day.
I survived a rocket attack that landed about 10 meters from me, very close to where we were standing. We were so close to the launch site, that the warning alarm came after the rocket had already impacted. Thankfully, we were able to dive under a vehicle for some shelter and the 3 of us made it through unscathed.
This chick wanting to hook up with me so quickly. I kept putting it off. Finally, after a month, she had to admit she was pregnant with someone else's kid. Tried to trap me.
Studying video game development in college. Reading about the standard of living for those people and the horrific abusive practices in the industry made me realize I was totally right to just go with electrical engineering.
Had a teacher in high school who was wicked sarcastic and witty, while also being a hard-ass grader. To me, the perfect teacher. Class was challenging but we were all laughing and having a good time. He was a great mentor and I continued to visit his class even after I graduated. One time, post-graduation, I was sitting in his office and I had just given him some art to decorate his classroom with and he was so excited he blurted, "I could kiss you." Something about the intense eye contact unsettled me, but I laughed it off. 17Y, oh girl, what can I say? Couple months later, he was arrested for having a sexual relationship with an underage student.
I found a new job. Boss seemed nice in the interview. Started working and right from the start people weren't comfortable talking about the job, and you could literally smell the fear. Also there was very little work to do. My direct colleague was sick, and they wouldn't give me her phone number. I wanted to discuss a few strategies to move forward, but everyone kept dodging giving me her number. After 2 days I found I had a headache going there, which got worse during the day, so I quit. Company doesn't exist anymore. I guess you can't run a job agency without customers and everybody just pretending to work. My ex. She turned out to be crazy. Literally, not the kind of crazy label angry bitchy women get, but actually crazy. She ended up in a state mental hospital for at the very least 1 year mandatorily. But, while we were together, she threatened to kill herself if I left, multiple times. She broke into my apartment and forced me to let her stay the night and cuddle her, wouldn't let me sleep. Fun fact, she cheated on me and gave me gonorrhea. I'm stupid for not leaving her beforehand and just reporting her to the police, but that was the final straw. The bullet I dodged? I didn't get her pregnant. Thank God.
Abusive boyfriend dumped me. If he hadn't, I most likely wouldn't have left and even would have married him.
Not a bullet but a knife. I was gonna get jumped by 6 guys, so I did the normal thing, punch one in the face and run. I got to a road, tripped on the curb, and one of the guys pulled a knife on me when police lights flashed on the road I just passed. The assaulters ran. But I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't tried and didn't get spotted by the police. Edit 1. Wow, thanks for 100 upvotes. I didn't expect this to blow up. Thanks means a lot. Edit 2. Thanks for the 1K everyone. Edit 3. Thanks for the awards, and I know there will be some people going, You shouldn't thank people. Well, I don't care, my mum raised a gentleman.
Thinking about suicide when I was younger, but now it's honestly not the way. Got rid of the big depression I had to. Just being grateful for life. A rocket fell about 50 meters from me. The ceiling started to crumble a bit, but I was okay, except a mild PTSD. Broke up with an abuser. He told me he wanted to marry me all the time, but he never asked, and he never produced a ring, thank God. He did get married and so did I, but I still worry about his wife even though I have no real connection to her.
My ex-girlfriend, that I had been planning to propose to. Couple months ago she cussed out my 11-year-old daughter, accused her of trying to break us up, never apologized, and then stole our 1-year-old puppy and immediately blocked me on everything. Depression is a bitch, but I thank the Creator daily for whoever was looking out for me on that one.
Back in middle school, my friend and I would ride our bikes home every day. One day, he was being a jerk, so I left without him. Turns out, he got hit by a car. Luckily, the car barely clipped his bike, so he got away with a broken leg. If I was there, I would have been riding behind him, taking the full force of the car.
My great-grandfather was in the Merchant Navy in the war. He was in the engine room at the bottom of the ship and his friend came down to take over the shift early. Minutes later a torpedo struck and everyone at the bottom of the ship couldn't escape and died. My great-grandfather would have been one of them otherwise. Then, he was in the sea for a while and happened to be picked up by some Portuguese fishermen who saved him. Then, all part of the same tale, he escaped death again. He was meant to be on a flight back to the UK but got kicked off last minute to be replaced by VIPs. That plane got shot down and everyone died in it. Miss you great-grandpa X, edit, thank you for all the appreciation. I'm so glad to be able to share his story.
Once in my early 20s I ran into a crazy ex-girlfriend at the bar. She really wanted to hook up that night and I really wanted to, but I just started seeing someone new and declined. Then she basically started begging to go home with me and I just had a really bad feeling about it. It started to get a little weird, but the night went on and we went our separate ways. A couple weeks later she called me crying, saying she had no one to go to and asked if I could give her a ride to the abortion clinic. So I did, 'cause I knew she needed help, but I instantly knew if I went home with her that night she would have told me it's my kid. She tried to trap me.
Last year I was cut from the AA hockey team that I usually played on every year because of a scheduling mishap with my lacrosse team's tournament, so I ended up playing that year. That year a girl gave almost everyone the flu. They didn't make it to provincials, cities, or even make it past semis in a tournament. Also the 3 imports, really good players from different leagues invited to play, made everyone on the team season hell because of their entitled attitude and costing games by taking stupid penalties. While I had a fun team experience with a group of great girls.
Me and my best friend went to Florida for a week during the last week of February. Literally the last week before COVID got batshit crazy down there.
Drove for about 800 miles without ever realizing that the loud click grinding noise I was hearing was a fried wheel bearing. Mechanic said I was incredibly lucky not to have lost the wheel while driving. Nearly died in a car accident about a month ago. I was extremely shaken up at first, and in shock for a few days, but after talking to the psychiatrist there about it, I realized that if the guy driving hadn't crashed the car, I would have been raped by him. I told him I wanted to go home, but he said, my apartment first before driving off. And then we crashed. Probably the biggest bullet I've ever dodged, even if it resulted in internal bleeding.
Got mugged a few months ago. Jackass had the gun to my chest. Made it out minus my wallet and all the cash inside.